Hello everyone, my name is Reese Pope, and today I will be talking to you guys about copper as a commodity. Now, when you think of copper, you might be thinking of pennies, the Statue of Liberty, even the element on the periodic table. But one of the most common uses for copper is in everyday wiring. Copper is very conductive and very malleable. Conductivity, which means that it can transfer energy very easily through it. Same thing with electricity, which is why it's used in many wire today. Malleability is when a metal can be shaped how you want it at any given time with relative ease. It is also relatively cheap compared to other conductive metals such as gold, platinum, etc. Other uses for copper are its pots and jewelry. Pots, like I said, it is very conductive, which means it can spread the heat evenly throughout the pan and cook the food thoroughly. Copper is also a very pretty color to a lot of people, so it is used in a lot of jewelry and it's very malleable, which makes it easier for people to be able to mold it to what they want. The price of copper, as any other commodity would, shifts with time. Over the past 5 years, as seen in this graph, copper has fluctuated very drastically on prices, usually shifting between $5 and $3. Right now, the average price is $4.88, about. And as you can see, currently we are at the highest price that copper has been within the last 5 years, about matching 2022. On this graph, this shows the last 30 days of what has happened to the price of copper. As you can see, right now, the price of a pound of copper is about $4.95. But with any given time, just like any other commodity, the price can shift drastically. But compared to other metals, this one is relatively cheap. While on the topic of changing with times, we can talk about the future projections for copper. Experts believe that demand for copper will only rise in the future due to copper being in wire and wiring being so important for renewable energy, which is very large today and will only continue to rise. I believe investing in copper would be a good plan just because copper won't be able to be depleted as easily as others since it's very common in the Earth's crust, and there are also recycling facilities for copper to reuse it. Switching to a more economical standpoint about copper as a commodity, we can talk about the supply and demand part. Some of the biggest suppliers of copper are mining companies. Specifically, these three make up more than 70% of copper as a commodity. BHP, which is an Australian mining company, they only do precious metals, but they still produce quite a bit of copper a year. 1.6 metric tons was in 2024. Codelco, they are a Chilean mining company who focuses mainly on copper, and they produce about 1.44 metric tons in 2024. And the only copper-specific mining company who has such a large portion and control over copper is Freeport McMoRan. They produced 1.2 metric tons in 2024. When it comes to countries as suppliers, Chile is one of the biggest suppliers of copper on the planet. They have sold the most copper, raw copper specifically, along with refined copper, which is usually what is being exported from countries. A very far second from Chile is the Democratic Republic of Congo, just because they have such a natural affinity for copper. Raw copper is usually associated with the mines and who is exporting them to countries who will refine the copper. So obviously Chile is still in first. They have exported about 30 billion USD worth of copper in 2024. South American countries have a natural competitive advantage for copper, but specifically Peru and Brazil, both are big contributors to the large. Indonesia, which is a series of islands, is very rich in copper, along with Australia, as we saw with the Australian mining company BHP. Switching to the demands for copper, large electric companies like General Electric and American Power They are usually who purchase the most when it comes to copper. Small businesses might also purchase copper, but these are the main contributors and make up more than like 80% of the demand for copper. When it comes to imports, raw copper is usually the biggest importation because the copper from the mines in all of the other countries will go to a different country to get refined than to be resold. Specifically, China has a very, very large advantage in this. They import a lot of copper just to refine it and then sell it off once again. The US, Italy, and Germany also make up a small portion of the refinement, and then they export it after they're done. Looking at the actual supply and demand chart for copper, it usually stays the same, but there are things that can affect it. Supply, when you're recycling copper, you're increasing the supply, which means it can be reused in different products. And if there's new mines, that will also increase the supply. Depletion may decrease the supply some, but not as terribly as if it was gold or something that was more rare in the Earth's crust. The supply for copper will only go down to slight depletion if mining costs go up, strikes, or natural disasters. These are exterior components that will affect it, so there's nothing directly about the copper that will affect the price. The demand for copper will always be going up because the need for electronics in such a digitalized world will continue to go up, which means copper wiring, which is cheap, will also increase, which means the price will also go up. And the only way that I believe that the demand would go down is if there was a government intervention like tariffs or recalls on certain copper items because they're deemed unsafe for consumers. On the topic of exterior components, some of the largest impacts on copper have been due to strikes, specifically strikes in Chile. Miners work in these mines for hours without safe work conditions and for not very good pay. This has caused the production of copper to go down, which means the price is going to go up because this is interfering with the demand. COVID-19, which was one of the largest events that affected all commodities, as seen with others, it just made the demand and supply for copper go down as everyone was stuck inside and couldn't go to work or couldn't buy stuff. More current events are the Russia and Ukrainian war. The growing tensions between the two powers make trading copper a risk. Specifically to these two countries, it's hard for countries to trade with them because it could break out in war. And since copper is a big part of only a select few countries, this could lead to tensions rising. Another current event which happened this July was a tunnel collapse in the Codelco mines, as mentioned above. The company had to cut the mine off because it was unstable, losing tens of thousands of tons of copper of profit. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.